Welcome back to Power Play on this Friday. I'm Todd Heyden. To the politics of the carbon tax and how the idea of paying more to help the environment can backfire in tough economic times. When many Canadians are struggling with the cost of living, it becomes something of a tough sell. The Conservatives know that, and their leader Pierre Poilievre is now accusing Justin Trudeau of panicking and reversing some parts of his carbon tax plan due to bad polling numbers. Time for our front bench. Let's bring them in. Melanie Paradis, the Director of Communications for former Conservative leader Erin O'Toole, our very own Rachel Aiello, CTV Senior Digital Parliamentary Correspondent in Montreal. We've got the President of Traxon Strategies, Carl Belanger, who worked with former NDP leader Tom Mulcair. And from our Ottawa Bureau, we have Carleen Verheyen from Summit Strategy. She held senior roles at the Liberals in their election campaigns 2015, 19, and 2021. Good to see all of you. And Melanie, I'll start with you on this. Is this the politics of panic by Justin Trudeau?
Absolutely. In the past week, the entire Liberal energy plan, their energy agenda has collapsed. From the Supreme Court of Canada ruling that Bill C-69 is unconstitutional, that's the No Pipelines Act, for those at home who don't know what Bill C-69 is, that's been ruled unconstitutional. And now the Liberals are forced to acknowledge that the carbon tax has absolutely increased the cost of living for Canadians all across the country. And for years, they've been arguing that it wouldn't increase the cost at all. And so now they're forced to come out and backtrack and say they're going to put a pause for the next 3 years. Well, the reactions from across the country, from Blaine Higgs, from Doug Ford, from Danielle Smith, premiers across the country are saying this doesn't go far enough. You need to axe the carbon tax once and for all.
Carleen, what's your read on this and the announcement by Justin Trudeau on Thursday to dial back some elements anyway, or delay some of the elements?
This is a move that...
Yeah, go ahead, Carleen,
sorry,
first, and then we'll get to Carl. Yeah.
Sorry.
This is a move that isn't unexpected coming from the Liberals. Ever since they presented their first platform to Canadians under the leadership of Justin Trudeau in the 2015 election, they've really carefully calibrated their climate action plan so that they could build that broad coalition of support that they would need in order to form a government that includes progressive Canadians who care deeply about climate change, as well as those more centrist Canadians who also have economic and financial concerns. Ever since the pollution pricing model was introduced during the first mandate, they've been very careful to ensure that it isn't overly burdensome on the Canadian taxpayer. They've done that by implementing carbon pricing rebates that are checks that go right back into the bank accounts of Canadian families in provinces that are subscribing to the federal model. And in fact, they announced that they're doubling some of those this week. So I would consider this a move that aims to recognize changing economic circumstances. The other thing that I would mention, though, that's important to take into account, and I think you'll see this message coming from the Liberals in the weeks to come as well, is that, yeah, things are expensive. You know what else is expensive? The increasing impacts of climate change that we're living with when we see record impacts of wildfires like we had this summer, or the droughts that our farmers are facing and having to cope with. There's a cost on both sides, and I think it's no longer credible in 2023 for a Canadian federal political party or party leader to not have a plan to tackle climate change.
To Carl Belanger in Montreal. Carl, your read.
Well, I think that, yes, it is a climb down by Justin Trudeau. Just a month ago, his Environment Minister, Stephen Guilbeault, was saying, how unfair it would be if you started to carve out exceptions to the rule. And it is unfair, and that's why now you have people who will make cases for different exceptions. Maybe the people who need to use diesel to go to work in some rural communities, or you just even go do a grocery. You have people who are eating their own with natural gas. They'll make a case too, and so on and so forth. So the pressure will ramp up. And the fact that Justin Trudeau backed down here is pure politics. The nervous Nellies, especially from Atlantic Canada, got through to him. And now you have a reversal of policy. Is it good politics? Maybe. Time will tell. But in terms of public policy, it's a major, major climb down.
Rachel Aiello, you've been following the carbon tax rollout for a number of years now. Your take on what we saw on Thursday, sort of the significance of it.
I think it was significant for political reasons, as others have raised. I think this was a move that the Prime Minister was clearly pressured into making. We were here a couple of weeks ago talking about a Liberal MP who had voted with the Conservatives in support of their Axe the Tax motion. So clearly there was division. Atlantic MPs had been voicing this to the Prime Minister. I think there's two things that I'm really watching for here, Todd, though, is the Prime Minister kind of in passing during that media availability mentioned that because in certain areas the government will now be collecting less revenue, some people's rebates might be smaller, which seems counterintuitive to the entire focus of this affordability measure. And then also what these other asks are going to be. Are other jurisdictions, other people going to be making the case? Is this a precedent-setting moment where we are now starting to see an erosion, a chipping away at other little pieces as Canadians and stakeholders try to make their case why other elements of the Liberals' environmental plans are unfairly impacting them?
It's interesting, back to you, Mel, just the idea that, politics is often the art of adjusting your policies when you encounter headwinds. And so, some would say, hey, smart strategy. Maybe there's reluctance out there. Certainly your Atlantic MPs are saying that their constituents are talking about the carbon tax a lot, not in a good way. It's doing us damage here. So maybe a little recalibration is the smart move.
But the headwinds are every winter. So every winter, Canadians have to heat their homes, and every winter the bills keep going up, the costs go up, and so they see that coming. We're just starting to turn our furnaces on across the country, and people are starting to receive those bills in Atlantic Canada and in rural areas where they've been filling up their oil tanks for home heating. They would have already started receiving those bills when they filled up. But the fact is, this measure does nothing to help Canadians across the country who are heating their homes on natural gas. I am one of them. There are thousands of Canadians who heat their homes that way in Ontario and Alberta, across the country, and this doesn't cover that. So I think that the reality is that the government needs to stand up and cut the tax entirely, or at a minimum, include all forms of home heating, because this is going to impact everybody this winter.